Hey, what's up, you guys? We are talking about masculinity today and how the media affects how we can define masculinity and how young boys and men understand masculinity. Today we have Emma on the podcast.
Hi, everyone. It's so nice to be here. Thank you for having me, Cleo.
Of course. We are just going to quickly bring up Connell's theory of masculinity and the four types that she outlines.
Yeah, I think that's a good place to start. So firstly, hegemonic masculinity, which is at the top of the kind of food chain of masculinity, at the top of the hierarchical pyramid. This kind of reinforces the idea that men should dominate over women and that the patriarchy is working exactly as it should and should not be changed.
And then we have complicit masculinity. Most men don't reinforce masculinity, but they benefit from it. Mm-hmm. So it's kind of like men staying silent during, like a rape case, and they know something about it, but they don't do anything about it. And that's kind of where that problem stems, and that's very much connected to hegemonic masculinity.
So next is marginalized masculinity. So this kind of refers to men who still comply with gender norms, but are further marginalized by other factors like their race, class, ability, religion, etc. So they don't receive the same privilege as a cis straight white man.
And then we have subordinate masculinity, who is like men who act like women. So it kind of reflects an opposition to masculinity. It's associated very heavily with femininity, and it's very much tied to homophobia.
And all four of these masculinities reinforce the domination of hegemonic masculinity.
Yes. So now that we've outlined that for you, you can just take a moment to think about that, and we will come right back with some research that explains everything for you guys. The lovely Emma over here will be talking about functionalist perspective.
Yes. So I'll be taking a functionalist approach to looking at how children's media reinforces masculinity in young boys.
I will be taking the standpoint perspective of how the media shapes masculinity for young boys, and
hopefully with bringing up these two very different perspectives, we're going to get a broader idea of how masculinity is shaped through children's media, and hopefully we can come up with a solution.
Yes, to kind of fixing this systemic problem. But to every solution, there is a limitation, so stay tuned.
Okay, so I just want to start by bringing up the article that I read and researched for this podcast. So I read a journal article titled "The News Media and Children's Political Socialization." And this article basically, while focusing on the news, shows how vital media is for children's political socialization. So for me, this kind of shows how, although harmful, this media is functional in kind of setting the stage for masculinity, because although it kind of reinforces the patriarchy and shows hegemonic masculinity as an ideal type of how men should act, that is what we see in society. And it does accurately prepare these boys for what society's like.
Unfortunately.
Yeah.
I read a very similar article on this topic called Gender Performativity and Post-Feminist Parenting in Children's Television Shows by Douglas Tang and Rice, and they kind of just brought up how stereotypes are very reinforced. To pull a quote, "Stereotypes endure in contemporary children's media, which perpetuate and validate gender division of labor," on just page 240 there. This is very true in children's media, but not so much, I was thinking, for, media directed to older generations.
Okay.
And it kind of got me thinking, like, I've watched Desperate Housewives, and there's, like, one of the housewives is, like, she has 4 kids, but she works a full-time job, and there's another one that, they all just have different ideas of womanhood and what it means to be a mother and the division of labor, and that they all have boys as well, as sons. And, I was thinking, that show is for older generations, but it kind of opened my eyes when I first watched it to just, like, the differences in our society and to masculinity and how everything should be And if it opened my eyes, then why couldn't something like that, open a younger person's eyes? Someone that comes from a completely different background than me, has a different standpoint than me, can understand how I'm thinking, right? So if we show a young child different types of masculinity and make it seem normal, then they're going to think it's normal.
Yeah, and going back to the news media and children's political socialization, they wrote a quote that I really liked, and it said, "Children learn when they read newspapers or magazines, when they watch television or films, or when they listen to the radio, just as surely as when they read textbooks or listen to lectures." So that's on page 165. But it goes to show how formational this media is in the minds of these children. So I think if we want to kind of change the perception of masculinity and what masculinity can be and make it more accepting, we need to change the media.
Yeah, exactly. And I was thinking about this quote that I think really kind of pushes towards our solution here in changing the media. Just from the mask you wear, or the mask you live in, the video, at about 50 minutes in, someone says, if you're going to be a transformational coach, you got to know what you're transforming. So there he was talking about, being a coach to children and kind of debunking this whole gender stereotype thing. But I'm thinking the coach in our scenario is the media.
Yeah.
They're the ones shaping these kids' idea and ideals of what femininity and masculinity should be. So why don't we transform when we're coaching these children to understand?
Exactly.
We know what we need to fix here, because we've seen it. So why don't we just change how we're teaching them right off the bat?
Yeah, and this will definitely help, I feel. Going back to Connell's theory of masculinities, help dismantle this hierarchy of one way of acting and portraying manhood and masculinity being deemed more socially acceptable than another. Like, why is a man who is acting more feminine and tied more to femininity, or typical femininity than, I guess, typical masculinity, being seen as less than?
Yeah. And that goes back to, subordination. Subordinated masculinity, I guess. And just how they have so many different experiences compared to, a white cis man who's very masculine. And if we show children that experience from that standpoint, they're going to understand it a lot better than older generations.
Yeah.
They're going to be way more accepting. They're going to understand the struggles. They're going to understand that not everyone is the same. And that would totally debunk the hierarchy we have there.
Exactly. Because this media, again, I say this again and again, is vital in the socialization of children. So why are we showing them things that are actively going to harm them later in life?
Exactly. And I guess just to end here, so yeah, the media does have a huge role in socialization of children and men, but we also need to understand that not everyone has the same access to media.
You're right.
So, how could we really change the whole perception of masculinity through the media if not everyone, has access to a TV or to books or to school even, right?
Yeah, that is a definite limitation of our solution, I feel.
And that, I think, would come down to parenting and how children are, going to be parented by their kids.
Yeah, we have to ensure that parents are accepting and kind of in order to change this harmful definition of masculinity in society.
Well, that's all we have for you guys today.
Cleo, thank you so much for having me.
Yes, of course.
It's always a blast on the podcast.
Always a blast on the podcast. And we look forward to telling you guys more about social environments next week.
Bye.
Bye.